A subscription can look complete right up until the moment one specific task matters. You open the tool, choose the function you need, and the interface suddenly tells you that your current plan does not include it. The price you thought covered your work is no longer the price of finishing the workflow. What changed was not the file, the account, or the task. A feature entitlement gate was reached. A subscription plan is more than a name and a monthly charge. Behind that label sits a list of permissions. Those permissions determine which features the account can use, which controls remain inactive, and which workflows stop at an upgrade boundary. The plan may appear broad in a comparison table, but the real test happens when a specific action is matched against the account's entitlement set. Picture a simple map. On the left is the subscriber's current plan. In the middle is the work they are trying to complete. On the right is the feature required to finish it. At first, the path looks open. The account can create, edit, save, and organize documents. Then the user reaches one new task. Compare two versions of a PDF. That request triggers another layer. The product checks whether the account has permission to use the comparison feature. The feature is not evaluated by how important it feels to the user. It is evaluated by the entitlement attached to the account. If the required permission is missing, the workflow stops, even though many nearby tools remain available. This is the first hidden layer in the plan. At a conceptual level, the gate connects three states. First is the account state, which subscription is active. Second is the entitlement state, which capabilities that subscription authorizes. Third is the workflow state, which capability the user is requesting at that moment. The product allows the action only when the requested capability matches the permissions assigned to the account. This arrangement makes access precise. A provider does not need to create a completely separate application for every tier. The same product can expose different capabilities according to the subscription attached to the account. For the subscriber, however, the feature boundary may stay out of sight until the workflow reaches it. A plan comparison can describe categories of functions, while the entitlement check decides access to one exact function. The subscriber did not buy a promise that every document task would be available. The subscriber bought access to a defined bundle of features. Most of that bundle can remain invisible during ordinary use because permission checks happen quietly in the background. The boundary becomes visible only when the user asks the product to perform something outside the assigned tier. Adobe Acrobat provides a bounded example. In Adobe's United States individual subscription structure, Acrobat Standard and Acrobat Pro are presented as different feature sets. Adobe's current documentation identifies Compare Files as an Acrobat Pro capability. The documented workflow allows a user to choose two files, apply comparison settings, and generate a results document that highlights differences. The important point is not the brand name, it is the sequence. A subscriber may use Acrobat Standard for common PDF tasks without encountering a problem. The plan appears sufficient because the active workflow stays inside the standard entitlement set. Later, the subscriber needs to compare two document versions. That single task crosses into a feature assigned to Acrobat Pro. The account can still perform the earlier work, but it no longer covers the full workflow now required. Return to the map. The left side still shows the same plan. The middle still shows the same user, but the right side now contains a new requirement. Compare files. An entitlement check sits between the user's request and the feature. The path from standard to the comparison function is blocked, while the path from Pro remains open. The plan did not suddenly lose features. The workflow changed. Plan sufficiency is conditional. A plan can be adequate for 10 routine tasks and still fail on the 11th. Broad labels such as basic, standard, professional, or premium can summarize a product line, but they cannot reveal every dependency inside a real workflow. The user often discovers the decisive dependency only when the missing feature becomes necessary. Feature gating also serves a business and product function. Software providers can use tiers to offer different service levels to different groups. Some subscribers need a narrow set of tools. Others place more value on advanced functions. Separate feature bundles allow the provider to maintain more than one product level instead of charging every customer for the broadest version. Research on information goods supports this general logic. Software versions can be differentiated by feature configuration, and access rules can be linked to subscription conditions. Product development, maintenance, infrastructure, and version management costs may also shape how features are grouped. Those general mechanisms explain why entitlement gates exist, but they do not reveal the internal reason for placing any one Adobe feature in a particular plan. The deeper effect appears when the missing feature is essential rather than optional. A counterfactual makes the boundary clearer. If the subscriber never needs document comparison, the absent entitlement may have no practical effect. Acrobat Standard can remain fully adequate for that person's actual work. The consequence appears only when the missing capability becomes necessary to complete a real task. The effective requirement is therefore created by the combination of the user's workflow and the plan's feature map, not by the higher tier alone. This also explains why the same subscription can feel complete to one user and incomplete to another. Their accounts may have identical entitlements, but their workflows ask for different capabilities. The gate does not measure satisfaction or importance. It answers a narrower operational question. Does this account have permission to execute this feature? Suppose the subscriber only wants to explore document comparison once. The blocked control is an inconvenience. But suppose comparison is required for a recurring review process, a contract revision, or a version control workflow. Now the missing feature changes the minimum product configuration capable of completing the job. The visual map expands again. Instead of showing one isolated locked feature, it now shows the full workflow. Open the files, edit the documents, compare the versions, review the changes, and deliver the result. Every earlier step fits inside the current plan. One step does not. Because the workflow cannot be completed without that step, the higher entitlement becomes the effective requirement for the whole process. The issue is no longer access to one control. It is the cost of completing an entire workflow. The headline subscription price may therefore understate the relevant cost for a particular user, even when the advertised plan description is accurate. The listed price answers a general question. What does this plan include? The user's actual problem is narrower. Does this plan include every feature needed for this complete task? Those questions can produce different answers. A feature gate can also change comparison between products. Two plans may both appear suitable when evaluated through broad categories such as editing, sharing, or document management. Once a specific workflow is mapped step by step, one product may require a higher tier while another handles the task differently. The comparison shifts from plan names to entitlement coverage. No exact price is needed to see the consequence. If one required feature is available only in a higher plan, then the effective cost of using that product for the complete workflow is tied to the higher entitlement. The original plan remains real and useful. It simply no longer represents the minimum configuration needed for that user's current task. There is an important limit to this example. Adobe's current United States documentation supports the distinction between Acrobat Standard and Acrobat Pro and identifies Compare Files as a Pro capability. It does not establish that every subscriber sees the same lock icon, upgrade message, or navigation path. It also does not show that feature gating is unfair, deceptive, or illegal. Different tiers can serve legitimate product, maintenance, and segmentation functions. The evidence supports a workflow-level entitlement boundary, not a claim about hidden intent, universal interface design, or the economics of every user. Now simplify the map one final time. Do not begin with the plan label. Begin with the workflow. List the functions required to complete it, then match each function to the entitlement set of the plan. If every required feature is covered, the plan is sufficient. If one essential feature sits outside the tier, that missing permission defines the minimum plan needed for the job. The most useful way to understand a subscription is not by asking whether the plan sounds complete. It is by asking whether its entitlements complete the workflow.